not knowing where your daughter is, this beautiful young woman, 33 years old, and she just vanishes.
I don't think it's a coincidence she went missing the same day that this People's Court episode aired.
You're practically sunburnt now from being out in the elements looking for her.
Somebody knows something.
We want to find Michelle.
This is questions about my daughter. Michelle is still missing.
Do you think we're close to an arrest?
Orlando, Florida, November 17th, 2011. Just days before Thanksgiving. Michelle Parker's fight with her ex-fiancé airs on TVs across the country.
And he shouldn't have put his hands on me, and he shouldn't have put his hands on me prior. He shouldn't have left me 3 or 4 times over the past year and a half that we've been together.
Her family wasn't prepared for what would happen later that day.
Michelle Parker is like a lot of women that you see around here in Orlando. She had these big dreams, she had these big plans, and she was making steps to make her dreams come true.
Michelle was just a hardworking single mother of 3. She had 2 jobs. She would bartend at night.
She also had a tanning business, which she advertised with decals on her Hummer. She was also going to cosmetology school. She wanted to make a better life for herself and also her 3 kids.
She worked hard. She loved her kids. She was an awesome mom. Those kids are so well taken care of.
If you look at her photos, you can tell that cosmetology was important to her. She was always made up.
These are photos of Michelle Parker from the Michelle Parker Missing Person Facebook page.
Always had her nails done, who always had her hair done right.
She was in school to get the license and the certification to one day work for her mother and the salon.
She's like a magnet. She just draws people in. She's a beautiful, beautiful person.
Michelle Parker turned heads, and she turned Dale Smith's head. And he was good looking, she was good looking.
Michelle Parker and Dale Smith had twins together and were even engaged at one point. Michelle was also taking care of her 11-year-old son from a previous relationship.
They met, they fell in love, and then the worst happened.
Michelle Parker and Dale Smith, her fiance, they appeared on this episode of the People's Court.
It was one of those relationships that went sour, and it went south pretty quickly.
They were fighting over a $5,000 engagement ring. She threw the ring off a hotel balcony during an argument, and he was suing her to get some compensation for it.
He's just outside the door, maybe about a foot. And then he said that he wanted his ring. So I took it off, and I threw it at him.
Then when the engagement was over, he wanted the ring back, which of course he couldn't get, so he wanted the money that the ring was worth.
The judge on the People's Court decided to split the cost, so Michelle Parker would have to pay about $2,500 to cover half the cost of that very expensive diamond ring. The People's Court episode was filmed over the summer, but it didn't air until November, and the family didn't even know when it was airing. So really, it was a surprise to everyone that this episode was on TV.
Vaughn Parker, Michelle's mom, told me specifically that it was not likely Michelle's idea to go on that episode. She felt somewhat humiliated afterwards.
And Michelle's mom explained that for the first time to ABC News.
It was just so that she wouldn't have to pay for that engagement ring. She said, that was the most humiliating experience of my life. I don't even ever want to see it.
So this case might not have stood out, but then it did. Because the day it was airing is the day that Michelle Parker disappeared. So it was November 17th, 2011. And the People's Court was going to air at 2 o'clock local time in Orlando. But Michelle Parker was out and about, and the last time she was seen was at 2:30 at her mom's salon. So it doesn't look like she actually watched the show.
And then that's the last time the mother would see her.
So at 3:30 that afternoon, Michelle's 11-year-old son gets home from school, and normally Michelle was there, but she wasn't at the house. So he did what he knew to do, which was to call his grandmother and say, hey, where's my mom?
Michelle's mom told ABC News about her grandson's concern.
Her son called and said, "Is Mom at the salon?" We're like, "No, honey, she should be taking a nap." She goes, "Well, I haven't seen her since I got home from school."
It was really out of the routine.
So at 4:26 that afternoon, Michelle's brother texts her to say, "Where are you?"
Michelle's brother gets this odd, cryptic text from her with one word, just one word, Waterford.
Now, that could be a reference to Waterford Lakes, which is a large neighborhood.
Waterford Lakes is an area of Orlando that has a big shopping center, has a movie theater, has restaurants. So when you say Waterford here in Orlando, everybody thinks of that shopping center.
It's about 30 minutes from where Michelle's home was, which is just bizarre because she was not known to hang out near Waterford.
Now, exactly what she meant by it, did she send that text? All these are unanswered questions.
And even more odd is that Michelle's family said it wasn't like her to send a one-word text.
She was more expressive. She would tell you what she's doing. So it does seem strange that the last text that she sent was just a one-word thing. Michelle was a bartender at a place called The Barn, which is a really busy, popular country western bar. And she was supposed to work at 7:30, but she never showed up.
All day long, Michelle Parker keeps missing these appointments.
By now, the family was really concerned. So Michelle's sister called the cops and reported her missing.
Normally, you have to wait about 24 hours before the police start looking into a missing persons case. And her sister felt strongly enough that the police needed to be investigating immediately.
Now it's 8 o'clock, she's still not around. A few minutes later, her phone is powered off. There's no explanation as to why she would ever do that.
The battery could have run out, it could have been destroyed. No one knows.
Her cell phone was powered down in kind of a central location that wasn't really near her house, near her work, near any place that she'd been.
This is the cell phone tower where Michelle's phone last pinged. Even in a voicemail to her father a day before she disappeared, Michelle appeared to be fine. Her father shared the message exclusively with the Today Show.
Hey, Dad. This is Michelle. Call me when you have lunch or you have break or at the end of your day, okay? I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
She was in good tone and glad to see us, and we were going to go eat some oysters, but she didn't even tell me about the show was going to be aired.
For her to go missing on the very day that she was going to be on the People's Court and make her national TV debut, that would be quite a coincidence for her to vanish on that day. And it really feels like somebody must have known that this was coming. Because why this day? Why not the day before or the day after?
Michelle's family was very concerned, and it was evident in her interview with the Today Show.
The first time in my life, I have been climbing under trains. I have been going through ditches and dumpsters, praying that she's not there.
The family wasn't wasting any time. They knew that when Michelle Parker was missing for just a few hours that something may be wrong. So they went to the police right away, and they really went to work quickly trying to launch search parties, calling friends and putting up flyers.
My wife's out there, everybody's searching, and let's hope we find her and bring her home.
There were literally thousands of flyers. These were posted everywhere. She basically became a household name here in the Central Florida area.
Michelle vanished right near Thanksgiving. So instead of celebrating, her family was having to deal with these searches. And when I would talk to Michelle's mother, Yvonne, they were terrified.
This isn't a wallet. This isn't just a purse. This is my baby girl. We need to find her and we need help.
They were dredging lakes. They were looking under bushes. They were looking for a body. And that's the worst thing that a mother can go through.
I'm scared. I'm shaking. I want to find Michelle alive, not dead.
There were a lot of questions about what could have happened. You know, Michelle's mother actually said maybe it was a carjacking.
Michelle's mom explained that theory on the Today Show and appealed to her abductor.
I know in my heart of heart that she's been carjacked, that the people saw an expensive car and a girl who looks like she has money. And I know they've made a mistake.
She had a very distinctive big car. It was a Hummer. Her logo splashed across the back windshield of Glow. That was advertising her tanning business.
There were local TV anchors that were questioning, could she have just run off?
There was speculation that maybe she was seeing someone else and they had run off together.
Michelle Parker started dating someone just a few weeks before her disappearance. This boyfriend, Nathan Mitchell, was really new to the whole Parker family.
He was even seen looking for her. He would be crying. He was on the news. He was desperate to get her back as well. Police soon determined that Nathan Mitchell wasn't involved with her disappearance.
Michelle worked at one of the most popular bars in Sanford, Florida. It's called The Barn. People get weird infatuations with bartenders oftentimes. So there was speculation that maybe there was a patron at that bar who followed her, who was stalking her, who could have possibly kidnapped her. No one knows.
But there was somewhere else Michelle went that caught investigators' attention. Up next, investigators make a big discovery. And
New video of Michelle Parker just hours before she goes missing.
video reveals a disturbing clue.
Michelle Parker, a beautiful mom of 3, vanishes on the very day that the People's Court airs that shows her and her ex-fiancé fighting over a ring.
These are photos of Michelle Parker from the Michelle Parker Missing Person Facebook page.
Police, family members don't know where she is, and attention is pointing to a lot of people who may be responsible.
Here's what we know. Michelle was last seen at 2:30 at her mom's salon. At 3:30, Michelle wasn't home when her 11-year-old son arrived after school. At 4:26, Michelle's brother received a text from her with one word, Waterford. And at 7:30, Michelle missed her bartending shift. But there was somewhere else Michelle went that caught investigators' attention. This is the police report Orlando Police Department provided us. Much of it has been redacted. Well, the report lists her last known location as her ex-fiancé Dale Smith's house.
At 3:18 p.m., her Hummer was seen going into Dale Smith's condo community. There were surveillance videos everywhere, so we do have a little clip of her parking her car there at his house.
We know that she dropped the twins off at that house, but what happened after is unknown. We don't really see her Hummer leaving his community because of the way the cameras are set up, so it does leave some mystery about when she may have left that neighborhood.
The way that neighborhood works is, because a lot of people have asked, why don't they have video of the vehicle leaving if it came in? Well, it's a loop around. So when you drive in, you would drive up to the house, and then it just loops back around to leave out of the gate. So that's why the vehicle is actually not seen leaving, because normally she just went around the loop.
There's so many cameras and so much surveillance in this neighborhood. So it's really strange that all we see is this few-second clip of her vehicle. There may be more. The cops may have it. They may not have released it.
In the first days of the search, you really didn't see much of Dale Smith because he was home taking care of the couple's twins and her other 11-year-old child. So he was not out as much going through the community, putting up flyers or wearing the T-shirts trying to find her.
And Michelle's mom defended Dale Smith on Good Morning America, saying he was cooperating with authorities.
The police have investigated, they've talked to him, they've searched everything he owns, he's let them in his home, they have his computers, he's with my twin babies right now, my grandbabies and his children, which is where he needs to be. He is crying every time I talk to him on the phone.
They took his cell phones and his computers, and he was a victim as much as everybody else.
The only thing we've heard from Smith's family is on the first day of the search, when his dad vouched for his son.
He ain't got nothing to do with that. He's got proof. He was here the whole time she was supposed to be gone.
Then investigators make a big discovery.
That distinctive Hummer that Michelle Parker drove was found the day after she was reported missing. It was found the other side of town, not really near where she lived.
Michelle's Hummer was found in the parking lot of the Walden Palms apartments.
The apartment complex wasn't the type of place where you would expect to see a Hummer. You know, it's kind of run down, it's in a rougher area. Nobody thought that Michelle had any business over on that side of town.
On that Hummer, for years, there was a decal that basically was promoting that tanning business.
The decal, and it said Glow, also would have had her phone number on it. That was gone. So it was strange. It looked like somebody had tried to make it a little bit less identifiable.
Her vehicle was found near a mall in basically South Orlando, which is obviously a county away. We're talking 20, 25 miles away. And that was just a miss.
If you look at a map where Michelle spent her time on her last day before she disappeared, she was zigzagging back and forth, which makes it really hard to understand exactly what she was doing or give us a place to look.
And there was something else that would add to the suspicion.
New video of Michelle Parker just hours before she goes missing.
At noon on the day that she disappeared, Michelle stopped at a KFC, and we have video of her making her order through the drive-thru, and it's the last known video that we have that actually shows her clearly. But it also shows a really interesting clue.
Now watch as the vehicle drives away. What do we see? Did you see that? The decals on the side of her truck, so distinct.
In the back of that Hummer, the decal that said Glow with her phone number was still there. So sometime between 12 o'clock and the time that the vehicle was found, that decal was peeled off. But it was definitely there when Michelle was driving.
Just because that vehicle has been found, we still want people to try to remember that Hummer. It had those glow stickers on there.
Well, removing the decal is really an obvious way to try to make sure this doesn't look like Michelle Parker's Hummer. It's a large, very big car, very flashy. You could recognize it going through the neighborhood. And really taking this glow decal off the back was a way of trying to perhaps hide evidence.
This whole thing doesn't feel like a regular carjacking that happened at random. This feels like something targeted where they decided that they needed to cover their tracks by peeling that decal off.
I know that it had to have been someone that knew her personally, no doubt in my mind.
Inside the vehicle, they still found her purse, her wallet, her cash, her other belongings, which really led police to think this wasn't a carjacking.
But Michelle's iPhone wasn't found in her Hummer, and her family knew that may be the key to tracking her down.
We need that iPhone. Don't touch it. Just call us.
It's mainly black with a little bit of pink and white Hurley writing.
And what about that cryptic text Michelle's brother received from her number with one word? Waterford. Waterford was way on the other side of town from where Michelle's Hummer was found. Did she send the text? Or did someone else? Coming up, police make a stunning announcement.
There's all these microphones set out.
I knew something big was going to happen.
Best mom ever. I was real proud of her. I told her that a week before she went missing, how proud I am of her. She's done everything right.
Michelle Parker, a mom of 3 and a popular bartender, is on the People's Court battling her ex-fiancé Dale Smith over a luxury engagement ring. But the day the show aired would also be the same day she mysteriously vanished. Her family said there was no way she would just abandon her kids.
9 days after Michelle disappeared, and 2 days after Thanksgiving, the cops descended on Dale Smith's parents' home. And this wasn't just a little polite door knock. This was multiple vehicles, multiple officers, that it was chaos.
Yesterday, as seen in the cell phone video, SWAT members raided Dale Smith Sr.'s Orange County home in the search for the missing mom.
We do know, according to some neighbors, that some chemical was used, whether it was a tear gas or a pepper spray. But police raided this home to try to seize evidence. They thought it was so important to do this over the Thanksgiving holiday.
We don't know what they were looking for or what they found.
Late today, a man believed to be the father of Michelle Parker's ex-fiancée refused to answer any questions.
Sir, can we talk to you for a moment? Can we talk to you about the raid here, sir?
They must have had a very good clue that Michelle was in there. Evidently she wasn't.
Then, 11 days after Michelle disappeared, there was a police press conference with Michelle's family.
There's all these microphones set out.
I knew something big was going to happen.
It's rainy, and it was sort of eerie.
After numerous tips and investigative leads, we are officially naming Dale Smith the ex-fiancée as the primary suspect in the disappearance of Michelle Parker. Mr. Smith is our primary focus.
Dale, if you're out there, honey, and you're listening to me, if you made a mistake and it was just a second of like, oh, I lost my head or whatever, and you didn't know what to do, our family needs to have Michelle home.
It was surprising that they made such a declarative statement like that he was a suspect, but then they didn't arrest him. And it didn't really go anywhere from there.
Chief, is Dale Smith a murder suspect?
We have a missing, beautiful young lady that we're trying to recover at this point.
It made everybody wonder, what evidence do they have? And is it not enough evidence for them to make an arrest?
Do you believe Dale Smith has lied to you?
We offered him a polygraph, and he simply refused.
We can only guess that Orlando police was trying to get a reaction out of Dale Smith.
Vaughn and Brad, Michelle's parents, they seemed like they knew this was going to happen.
You kept saying that, from the beginning, the whole family kept saying, no, it's not a suspect.
He was cooperating. He was cooperating. That's why.
Are you frustrated that he has not been taken into custody or not charged?
I'm very frustrated.
After Dale Smith was named as the suspect, all hell broke loose.
Dale Smith, whom police say is their only suspect in the disappearance of his ex-fiancée Michelle Parker, lunged at a news photographer, knocking him to the ground. People who arrived with Smith could then be heard jeering the fallen photographer.
The Today Show was among a group of photographers that caught the incident on camera.
Authorities actually took his kids away, saying that they feared for the kids' safety.
I'm Mark Nejame from Nejame Law, and I was one of Dale Smith's lead attorneys. It's natural that he would be a suspect. Any spouse of a missing other spouse is going to be the first suspect. Some people saying, well, I think it was him. That's not enough. And this isn't even one of those cases where a slick defense lawyer spins something. There's nothing there. There was none of Dale Smith's DNA found anywhere that would connect him to Michelle Parker's disappearance.
Up next, detectives get a break that could crack the case wide open.
Our jaws dropped and our eyes got wide.
People out there in Orlando know where Michelle Parker is. And I just hope that they will tell us. Just call Crime Line. It's anonymous. Tell us where she is so we can go and get her.
Michelle Parker is a hardworking mother of three. She's got 2 jobs, going to school, trying to be a cosmetologist. Now her ex-fiancé is the prime suspect in her disappearance.
She was an amazing girl. Everybody loved her. She always have a big smile. Even if she have a bad day, she always was smiling.
Michelle Parker fights her ex-fiancé on the People's Court. But the same day the episode airs, she suddenly vanishes.
Are you looking at an arrest of Dale Smith?
We are still in the investigating stage.
About an hour and a half after that episode of the People's Court aired in Orlando, Michelle was at her fiancé, Dale Smith's house, dropping her twins off. And no one knows what went on when she was there.
All we're trying to do is connect the dots. And there's just a few more dots that we need to connect to resolve this.
Did you kill her? Do you have any idea where she is? Where's Michelle? Did you kill her? Where is she?
Does Dale Smith know where Michelle Parker is?
No, of course not.
What do you say to people who say that this is incredibly odd, that the same day that Michelle disappears, she's on the People's Court?
I would agree with them. It is odd. Those are the serendipitous things that happen in life. So it's wholly inappropriate that law enforcement should have, did fully, completely, and absolutely investigate him from top to bottom, and everybody and everything surrounding him. But they came up with nothing to tie him into it.
My frustration lies in the fact that I'm a mother. This is my firstborn child. And I don't know where she is. And I don't know who did it for sure. I don't know where they put her. How disrespectful that is. Man up. Do the right thing.
2 days after the state takes Dale Smith's twins away from him, he goes back to court.
The judge, to the surprise of everybody, gives him custody of the kids again. all of us were looking at each other in the media, just like, I can't believe he has these kids back. He'd just been named a suspect. So for him to get his kids back, that was shocking.
It was an interesting hearing because right afterwards, it was Michelle Parker's mom, Yvonne, who went up and hugged Dale.
I hugged Dale to tell him that my grandbabies, I want to be able to see them. And I hope that, we can work something out because they're so important to me.
Smith's attorney says investigators interviewed the 3-year-old twins about the day their mom disappeared.
They talked actually to the children, who were very minor at the time, but there was simply a question without any adult being around. Did you hear them yelling? Did you hear was there any blood? Was there anything that anybody saw? And there was none of that.
Police didn't confirm if the children were interviewed. And while Dale Smith was granted custody of his children, his criminal past was also starting to surface.
Dale Smith had a record. He had been dishonorably discharged from the Marines. He had gotten into fights. He'd gotten charged with attempted aggravated battery. He had a drug charge.
In 2001, Dale Smith was court-martialed and convicted in a military court for domestic battery of his former wife. The Today Show spoke to her brother, whose pain is still evident.
The physical and mental abuse that he gave to her, she was pretty upset. She had never been treated like that by anyone.
He also had a restraining order that had been put out against him by Michelle. And the details were basically a yelling of obscenities. But one of the things he said, according to the paperwork, was, "Your day is coming." We don't know what that meant, but 2 years later, she disappeared, and he was the suspect.
Now, the judge considered that request but dismissed it, saying there was insufficient evidence to issue a restraining order.
There was a pretty tumultuous relationship. Right before she went missing, they only spoke whenever they had to deal with the children. It was never good. It was always just like borderline walking on ice.
This is a man who had a record, and these kids were given back to him just 2 days later. Can you imagine?
I'm Rajan Joshi, one of the attorneys for Dale Smith. The Dale Smith you see on paper with the rap sheet is absolutely different than the Dale Smith who you'll see today. Dale Smith is honestly an amazing person. He cares for his kids like I have never seen a father care for his kids.
So then these pictures come out of Dale doing a hot body contest, and he's shirtless, he's wearing jeans, and he's wearing a cowboy hat. And it certainly gave this idea of the type of guy that everybody thought that he was.
Dale Smith and Michelle Parker met while Dale Smith was doing a hot body contest at this bar called Cowboys. From my understanding, Michelle liked the way Dale looked and had a mutual friend introduce the two of them. They hit it off right away. Like any relationship, they had their problems, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Then, a major development in the case.
You guys, this is a real hard day. They found my daughter's cell phone. It just breaks my heart that my daughter's cell phone was found, because that means that there's something criminal. It's something criminal. And I had such high hopes that, maybe, we'd find her and she'd be alive. And I just don't think that's going to happen.
Nearly 3 weeks after Michelle disappeared, investigators find Michelle's cell phone in Lake Conway, near the Neela Avenue Bridge.
Maybe it was the bright pink case that she kept that phone in, the iPhone 4, but dive teams were able to find it.
Michelle's cell phone last pinged a mile away from where it was eventually found. Divers searching nearby bodies of water made the discovery.
But it was found in remarkably good condition, even though it was underwater. Think of all the things that are on a phone. Photos, your locations, your texts, your emails, your call history. So this is a treasure trove for the police. What's really interesting is the location where the phone was found. It's basically on the route from Dale Smith's home to his parents' home. And this isn't some major thoroughfare. This is kind of a back road.
Did Dale ever talk to you and tell you what happened the day that Michelle dropped the twins off?
The kids were dropped off. He had to work early, so he took the kids over to his parents' house.
The phone was found 5 miles from Dale Smith's parents' home and near the cell phone tower that tracked Michelle's last ping.
The final text she sent said Waterford, which is a suburb in the complete opposite direction of where her phone was found.
Police said her phone was never in Waterford. They searched the towers. It was a decoy.
So we don't know if that was a red herring. We don't know if that was something that someone was trying to throw police off the trail or what.
Up next.
I know positively for sure that's a body. I have no doubt.
What clues are in the water? And a bombshell development in the case.
The perpetrator of this crime did not act alone. This was a two-person situation.
I miss her so much, and I want her home. She needs to be where she's supposed to be.
Michelle Parker, a beautiful mom of 3, vanishes after she appears on the People's Court, battling it out with her ex-fiancé over an engagement ring. But 11 days after Michelle disappears, cops were looking at Dale Smith.
We are officially naming Dale Smith, the ex-fiancé, as the primary suspect. There are no other suspects that I'm aware of.
We'll find Michelle. It's just a matter of time. And Dale can run, but he cannot hide.
This beautiful young woman, 33 years old, and she just vanishes. And the last person to see her, he has to know something.
Dale Smith did know that segment of People's Court was going to air. I would point out, though, he prevailed in that case. If it was Dale Smith, what did he do with the body if, in fact, he had killed her? There was no way he could have disposed of the body. The children were in the apartment. He didn't go anywhere.
I believe if he had nothing to hide, he would have taken a polygraph test. He would have been out here helping us find her.
Dale Smith's attorney claims his client did try to find Michelle.
He is specifically requesting and asking for a full-scale search team to come into Central Florida, headed by Tim Miller, the foremost searcher in the United States from Texas EquiSearch, to help find her. What guilty person would do such a thing? I've spoken to Tim Miller, my friend and former client, today. Without a body, any prosecution is going to be difficult.
We can't find Michelle's body to prove that she's deceased.
But this world-renowned search expert, who has found over 400 missing people and the remains of more than 250 others, has state-of-the-art equipment to find missing people.
I know positively for sure that's a body. My name's Tim Miller, founder director of Texas EquiSearch.
After Michelle's phone was found in Lake Conway, speculation was mounting that Michelle could possibly be underwater. One of the tools investigators use in a case like this is a side-scan sonar.
We do this, our training also as far as making a dummy, putting it in the water. Side-scan sonar works the same principles as ultrasound. It sends sound waves down, it picks up an image, it sends that image back.
In his career, Tim Miller says he's found over 50 bodies in cars using side-scan sonar.
Most times, literally, we can put a diver right down on the body. There he is. There's a picture of him. I know that's a body. Right there's a leg, there's an arm, there's a head.
Miller says that no matter how long someone's been missing, there is hope that a body could still be found underwater.
We have found one after 9.5 years. That was in a container. The skeletal remains were in the container. I was asked to help out with the Michelle Parker case. Family member contacted me, Mark James, attorney in Florida. He contacted me, wanted us down there. And we let him know that we never get involved until law enforcement approves us coming in.
However, Miller says the Orlando Police Department didn't approve his involvement in the search, but wouldn't comment further. And in a shocking twist, 2 years after Michelle's disappearance, police have another key piece of evidence: the last known images of Michelle's Hummer.
In the video, you'll see that the car is not following anybody. No one is following the car. And the glow stickers that made it so prominent are no longer on the vehicle at that time at 8:55 p.m.
It's at a stoplight. It's really seen not too far from where it was recovered by the police a day after her disappearance.
The Hummer was caught on video at 8:55 p.m. on the day she disappeared. That means there was a 5-hour gap from the time she dropped her twins off to the time of this video.
Michelle was not in the car. The sticker was off. Somebody who did something to Michelle was driving that vehicle.
But the most interesting thing about that press conference is that authorities said that there might have been 2 people who were involved in the disappearance.
I firmly believe, after investigating this case for 2 years, that the perpetrator of this crime did not act alone. This was a 2-person situation.
Do they see movement or something in the passenger side mirror that suggests someone is sitting there?
The windows were a very dark tint and you could not see in them.
But the other thing about there being 2 people is that takes this from being some little crime of passion to something that's a lot more coordinated, a lot more calculated, a lot more planned out. So in legal terms, this would certainly turn it to a first-degree murder case if a body were found.
Do you know, was there anybody at Dale Smith's home the day that Michelle dropped her twins off at his house?
If there was, neither I or anybody out of the 7 billion people on the planet are aware of it.
With no signs of an arrest, Michelle Parker's family decides to take matters into their own hands and fight back.
I am in the rage stage. I am angry. How somebody could do this to her and her family and her children. And they think they're going to get away with it. You know what? I'm going to fight. I'm mad, and Michelle deserves this.
Nearly 2 years after her disappearance, Michelle's mom files a wrongful death lawsuit against Dale Smith, the only suspect named in her disappearance.
Michelle is still missing, and I want answers. And this is how we're going to try to get them.
You feel certain that Dale is responsible?
I think he knows. I think he knows.
Orlando police have not provided any details as to why they are calling Dale Smith a suspect in Michelle's disappearance.
The relationship between Dale Smith and Michelle Parker's family has totally fallen apart. And so Michelle's parents, especially her mother, they're dying to see their grandchildren, the twins. But Dale has not let them. That's one of the biggest tragedies involved here.
My daughter is missing. I love her and her children like they're my own. They're my DNA, and they are so important.
Michelle's mother, Yvonne, has been a crusader for grandparents' rights and grandparents' visitation rights.
Those kids are not going to be safe. He has a volatile temper. At some point, he is going to explode again. It's just a matter of time.
That has passed in the state of Florida, largely due to Yvonne's efforts, but she herself has not personally been able to see her grandchildren. And that is a really painful irony.
That, to me, is just absolutely outrageous.
Dale Smith still has custody of the twins. Michelle's family preferred not to comment on the case.
There's so many questions, we don't have answers to them. All we know is that Dale Smith was the primary suspect in her disappearance.
Whatever happened to Michelle is a mystery to all of us. Honestly, we could speculate, but neither Dale nor myself, nor anyone who I know, including law enforcement, knows what happened to Michelle.
Dale Smith continues to deny allegations that he had anything to do with Michelle's disappearance.
All these years later, and this is still in the courts, and really still a story about a family that's been torn apart.
The family has said that the worst thing is not having any answers, not knowing what happened to her. Really not even knowing if she's alive or dead.
Michelle's mom expressed on the Today Show how hard it's been.
I describe it as being at a funeral every single day. Every hour of every day. And it never goes away. And you can't get away from it. It's hard as you try.
They can suspect that she's gone, but they don't know for sure unless a body's found.
November 17th, 2011, I got a phone call from my nephew asking where his mother was. I still don't have that answer. It's very hard, and we have fought, and we have worked, and we have not slept. I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for all of your prayers, all of your support, for random days just sending us messages to tell us that, hey, you know, I saw a flyer, or I was thinking of your family. It truly does help, and it truly does mean the world to us.
Michelle Parker remains missing. She was last seen driving her black Hummer with the glow sticker. Her Hummer was an H3 model. The license number is AWG M26. Michelle was last seen wearing jeans, a Florida Gators hooded sweatshirt, and a silver cross necklace. If you have any information that could lead to her whereabouts, please call Crime Line at 800-423-TIPS.
We really have no idea how she got there.
Is this one of the greatest unsolved mysteries?
It must have been an absolutely horrifying discovery.
Surveillance video from the hotel's elevators show her acting unusual, as if she's hiding from someone.
It is truly bizarre.
Just a few miles from the glitz of Hollywood, California, and the beach along the Santa Monica Pier sits downtown L.A., known as the entertainment capital of the world. Every year, millions of tourists flock to see Los Angeles. In January 2013, Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old Canadian student, took a trip to L.A. But high above this sprawling metropolis would be a dark secret.
My name's Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old college student from Vancouver, Canada. She was going on vacation. In her picture, she's smiling, she's wearing glasses, she's very casually dressed.
And Elisa grew into a young woman who was said to be one of the nicest people you'd ever meet, who would do anything for anybody.
She was going to come down to California, taking public transportation, traveling by herself.
Then on this trip, she happened to go down to San Diego, and then she was coming through LA. She had her whole life ahead of her. So that makes what happened to her all the more shocking and bizarre. Elisa Lam comes to Los Angeles on January 26, 2013. And 2 days later, on January 28, 2013, she checks into the Cecil Hotel. They had this super slick website that made it look like you were staying in this adorable little boutique hotel with really affordable rates in the heart of up-and-coming downtown Los Angeles.
But 3 days after checking into the hotel, Elisa Lam mysteriously vanishes.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. Yesterday, we were made aware at robbery homicide of a missing persons case, Elisa Lam. She was last seen on the 31st at the Cecil Hotel at 640 South Main Street.
She would be in daily communication with her parents and her family
back up in Vancouver, British Columbia, and the contact stopped, which raised suspicion for the family.
Right now we're asking your help. We have a photo. Parents are here. They've flown down from Vancouver, and we're seeking to get this photo out so we can find Elisa.
You see Alyssa's parents in the background just looking so heartbroken and bewildered and confused. And they don't say anything, but you can see on their faces how terrified they are for their daughter.
I remember this press conference because I was like, okay, there's, someone who, is of my race who's missing. There's agony. They want their daughter to be found. They want their sister to be found.
They contacted the hotel and verified that nobody had seen Elisa, and so a report was made with the Los Angeles Police Department.
There's been no communication at all, and that's worried us and worried the family, so we're proceeding with the investigation on that.
Has she ever gone missing before? I mean, you mentioned it was out of
No, there's no
character.
prior history of any kind of behavior like this or any problems like this.
So, of course, the place to start is back where she was last seen, which is at the Cecil Hotel.
Police discover Elisa was last seen the day she was scheduled to check out of the hotel.
Investigators spent countless hours evaluating all of the different video cameras inside, outside the adjoining hotel, and some of them were working, some of them weren't. They drew the conclusion relatively soon that they did not think that she had left the hotel. They think she's there. Now it's just a matter of finding her.
There was an intense search for Elisa Lam. Flyers were passed out.
They did look through the hotel. They went floor by floor. They did talk to people. They did do a full search. There was no sign of Elisa Lam.
The investigators would have gotten the hotel, the list of all the guests, and looked at the backgrounds of every single one of those. And the first people they would have looked at were sexual predators, people on parole, probation, violent offenders. Hotel workers were questioned, all of the staff, maintenance workers.
19 days after Elisa was last seen, there's disturbing news.
I get in that morning, and we're assigned to turn a story that day about this extraordinarily strange event happening at the Cecil Hotel. The first people I saw was this British couple. They had been at the hotel 8 days, and they then told a revolting story. I don't know how else to put it.
There was something wrong. The pressure in the water was terrible. The shower was awful. The water, and when you turned the tap on, the water was coming black first for 2 seconds, and then it was going back to normal.
They noticed the water pressure was erratic. The water had a very peculiar odor. They drank from the tap. They bathed in it. The complaints were coming in about the water. So the maintenance man went to the hotel's water supply, the 4 tanks that are on the roof, and he proceeds to check them.
He noticed that there was a hatch open on top of one of the tanks.
And now to a gruesome discovery in California.
The body of a Canadian tourist missing for 2 weeks now. It has been found.
Investigators are trying to determine how the body of a missing woman from Vancouver ended up inside a water tank on top of a Los Angeles hotel.
It ends up that Elisa Lam's body had been decomposing in the hotel's water supply.
So when the maintenance worker discovered her, she was naked, floating face up in the water, and that's what caused him to contact the police. The tank was full, and the body was at the top, and her discarded clothes were at the bottom of the tank. The process to remove her body, they decided the best way to do it was to drain the tank so that her body would slowly come to rest at the bottom of the tank, and then cut with a torch a hole in the side from which they could remove the body. That's the best way to treat the body in order to retain any potential evidence and maintain the condition of her body.
The state of her body is particularly memorable because she was in the water for some time before she was discovered.
Obviously saturated with water, the skin's very wrinkled.
She wasn't wearing any clothes.
There may not have been an immediate recognition of her because, you know, the skin around her eyes would be kind of bulging and her skin would have been just very bloated and discolored.
Through markings on the body, investigators were able to determine it was Elisa Lam.
Along with her clothing, her wristwatch, and her room key were also discovered in the tank. The fact that a body has been found in a water tank on top of a hotel, that's automatically suspicious. That's just not where you expect to find a body. So when they found her body, of course, they're going to treat it as if it's potentially a homicide in order to preserve evidence.
You could see the water towers from the ground. If you step back a couple of blocks, you could visibly see them.
There's 4 of them that work in conjunction with one another to fill and refill and regulate the water usage in the hotel.
They were 10 feet high, and they were very close together. So it would have been very hard for somebody to get into the water tanks.
The tanks are made out of, you know, thick gauge steel. And of course the hatch is made out of the same material as the tank. It's heavy-duty steel.
It was really difficult to tell just from the video, but the opening was approximately this big.
The hatches were unlocked, unsecured. The hatch on it is an access portal, so to speak. It has hinges, but those hinges aren't intact, and you can literally just slide that hatch off to the side.
5 days before her body was found, police released the biggest bombshell in the case. Haunting video of Elisa's last moments alive.
It was surveillance video from the top of the elevator. You could definitely see that it was her.
You're not exactly sure what's going on. She's pushing buttons, she's cowering in corners.
At one point in the elevator, it looked like maybe she was hiding from someone. She seemed to be hiding in a corner, trying to make herself small and be out of sight if someone were walking by the elevator, and that was one of the moments that was rather odd.
Seems like she's talking to someone with these kind of wildly gesticulating hand movements.
I think that the elevator video is the best video that was retained so that somebody could recognize her. The clothing that was discovered in the tank with her matched the clothing that she was wearing in the videotape in the elevator.
With the release of the video, speculation was mounting about who could have been responsible for Elisa's death. And one of the biggest questions was, how did Elisa get up to the water tank?
It wasn't easy to get up to the roof of the hotel.
There was 2 access points, two ways to get up to the roof. There's a fire escape, and then there's also the internal stairwell that leads up to a door. That door is supposed to be alarmed so that if somebody opens that door from the inside, it notifies people down at the front desk, and that would cause them to send up a security guard or some hotel personnel to investigate why that door has been opened.
The hotel said the roof was a restricted area to guests.
The LAPD, the investigators, are not exactly sure how she accessed the roof.
The hotel staff says the roof's alarm system was working and was never activated during Elisa's stay.
One of the really suspicious things about Elisa's death is when the LAPD was investigating, trying to find her, they had canine units come to the Cecil, sniffing out for Elisa's scent.
Canines searched the hotel days after Elisa Lam was reported missing.
They did go to the roof with the canine unit, but the dogs detected no scent on the roof.
How did the dogs miss this? If she was walking on the roof, if she climbed her way to the water tower, how did the dogs miss that?
And the LAPD, weirdly enough, did not check the water tanks. So Elisa could have been in that tank the entire time. Or there's the other really strange fact, and that fact is that since the canine unit didn't detect Elisa's scent on the roof, perhaps her body had been placed in the tank after her death.
Once you get up to the roof, you've got to remember that everything attached to Elisa Lam, her body and her clothes, they're submerged in water, and that restricts the scent. And most people don't know that there was an alert. The dog did go down a hallway and alert at a window, and that window leads directly out to the fire escape. But that's where it lost its scent.
Police were now treating Elisa's death as suspicious.
Do you have her cell phone? Was it left in the hotel?
Could Elisa's cell phone explain what happened to her? And when the autopsy report is released,
I think somebody else had to have been involved for her to get in that position.
it would reveal some unsettling secrets and add to the confusion. Elisa Lam checks into downtown LA's Cecil Hotel. Chilling video from the hotel's elevator appears to show her hiding from someone. Then, she mysteriously disappears.
19 days after Alyssa was missing, the hotel starts getting complaints about the water quality in the hotel rooms. So the maintenance man for the Cecil goes up to the roof, checks the water tanks, and there he sees Alyssa's nude body floating in the water tank.
There was something about this death that's very gruesome. It's disturbing.
For as long as 19 days before Elisa's body was found, hotel guests brushed their teeth, bathed, and drank from the building's water supply.
Makes you feel physically sick, literally physically sick, but more than that, you feel psychologically it's not, you think about it and it's not good.
It really turns my stomach. Guess why a lot of people have left and went to another hotel.
Police were calling Elisa's death suspicious. Initially based on how Elisa was acting in the hotel elevator, some had speculated that maybe she had been under the influence of drugs.
I'm Jason Tovar, and I performed the autopsy on Elisa Lam. I didn't find any illicit drugs.
Her toxicology report also didn't show any signs of alcohol intoxication. Elisa's autopsy was completed 4 months after her body was found, but it would only add to the confusion.
After my examination, I concluded that the cause of death was drowning and the manner of death was accident. There was no evidence of foul play or an intent to harm herself, so homicide and suicide were excluded.
But not everyone was satisfied with the autopsy findings. Some believed that this had to be more than just an accident.
My name is Katie Orphan. I was one of the last people to see Elisa Lam. One of the things that is certainly strongest for me is the sense that maybe the way her death was ruled is not accurate. That maybe she didn't accidentally drown. It would have been a lot of work for her to get up in that water tank.
Katie Orphan is manager of a bookstore 2 blocks from the Cecil Hotel, chillingly called the last bookstore. Elisa Lam visited the store on January 31st, 2013.
She kind of stood out as a customer. She was asking my coworkers and myself a bunch of questions, telling us about herself a little, and really engaging in a way that a lot of our customers don't necessarily. They just come in to shop, but she was really chatty.
The police contacted Katie Orphan after finding a receipt and some items from the bookstore in Elisa Lam's hotel room. Elisa Lam came into the store in the afternoon, and based on the police timeline, Elisa was seen in the hotel elevator video hours later.
I spoke with the manager.
She was buying gifts for her family.
Yeah, she mentioned her sister.
And she had a lovely conversation with her. There was nothing unusual that she noticed.
She was smiling, she was cheerful. Yeah, she was in a good mood.
And I find that very inconsistent with all of the evidence that we see.
She asked us for recommendations, for directions on how to get to Pasadena. She bought a number of books, a number of records. She asked us about luggage limits and shipping to figure out how much she could buy and get home.
So she was planning ahead to doing things, which doesn't exactly match the profile of someone who's going to jump into a water tower.
She didn't sound like somebody who was wanting to die or didn't expect to be going somewhere. So I'm not seeing any indicators that she was in a depressive state at all.
I think somebody else had to have been involved for her to get in that position, for her to be found up there. The conclusion to her case is not satisfying to me, and I think to a lot of other people. It seemed like a very simple way of closing the case and saying, hey, there's nothing more we can do.
It takes an extreme amount of determination to say that she went out there to commit suicide.
I think most people, when you visit a hotel, especially in an older hotel, how do you know that there are water tanks on top of a building? How does she know that?
Why not just walk to the edge of the building and do a swan dive? I mean, it's just too bizarre to think that this just happened. I have difficulty believing that.
So was Elisa's body placed in the tank after her death? Police canines didn't detect her scent on the roof, and shocking details about the hotel were starting to emerge.
The Cecil's history is filled with really horrible stuff.
Who else was in the hotel?
Water from the tap, something the Cecil Hotel doesn't want you to see. Hotel resident Alvin Taylor helped us videotape it with a cell phone.
Yeah, smell of chlorine.
Chlorine. What the city is using to flush the hotel's entire water system after the gruesome discovery of a woman's body inside one of the rooftop tanks that may have been there for as long as 2.5 weeks.
Elisa Lam mysteriously vanishes from the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, where she's staying.
They released this video of her in the elevator of the Cecil Hotel.
All these crazy theories swirling around because of the video. It was a little scary.
Just strange behavior.
Either she's in some extreme distress, or as some people have speculated, she's hiding from someone, she's afraid. But it is noticeable.
Then, Elisa Lam's naked body was found floating in one of the hotel roof water tanks. The coroner ruled her death an accidental drowning, but not everyone agreed.
You know, there's always a possibility that someone took her up there.
Perhaps there were sex offenders in the area or in the hotel. Perhaps it was somebody who worked for the hotel.
I tried finding other people that were staying there when she was there.
If you look on the website of the Cecil Hotel, it makes it sound like it is a historic, interesting, rich in history place you want to go to in Los Angeles. I can tell you from being there, that is not the sense that I got.
When you walked inside the lobby of the Cecil, it was kind of the epitome of faded glamour. There are these beautiful columns. It definitely had a feeling of The Shining. There's these lovely murals that harken back to the time when the Cecil was a very nice upper middle class hotel in downtown Los Angeles, which when it was built in the 1920s was the center of LA. It was where all the nice hotels and restaurants and theaters were.
Thank you for calling the European-style Cecil Hotel, the best affordable hotel in downtown Los Angeles.
What the website didn't tell you was that one half of the building was still housing basically for extremely low income and transient tenants who had lived there for a long time.
Some of those permanent residents have sordid histories. Many of them are drug users. Many of them are on probation or parole.
The Hotel Cecil was basically on Skid Row in Los Angeles, where there was rampant mental illness and drug addiction and crime. It was a really rough area. I just don't think you can ignore the fact that if there was foul play, it would have been very easy for somebody from the other side of the building to have stalked Elisa, to have known about how to get to the roof, having lived there for years, and to have put her into the tank.
If we were looking at this as a potential murder situation, we would be looking for someone who was casing the hotel, looking for somebody who was a vulnerable target. Seeing someone who's young, out of her element, and friendly might be somebody who a perpetrator would hone right in on, because they would be less likely to be noticed.
The Cecil's history is filled with really horrible stuff. In the 50s and 60s, again, economic decline in downtown Los Angeles. This hotel became a place where people would go to end their lives.
There had been so many suicides at the Cecil that the people who lived there called it the suicide. Most of the people committed suicide by jumping out the windows, and a lot of times they would check in under assumed names.
Since its opening in 1924, the Cecil Hotel has seen as many as 13 deaths from unnatural causes.
And in 1964, there was a very tragic murder that is still unsolved that took place at the Cecil. And that was the murder of a woman named Goldie Osgood. She was raped and she was strangled, and her killer was never found.
Then there were serial killers who stayed there.
In the 1980s, the serial killer Richard Ramirez, the infamous Night Stalker, lived there. Another serial killer from Austria in the 90s, Jack Unterweger, stayed there.
For some reason, there was this dark cloud over this hotel's history.
But when Alyssa checked into the hotel, though it was known as the Hotel Cecil, its actual name was the Stay on Main. And that was another kind of rebranding effort. So one of the really weird things about Alyssa's disappearance and her subsequent death, to this day, we don't know where Alyssa's cell phone went.
Had it been discovered in her room, we know it wasn't in the tank. There are phone records in there that are going to be very revealing as to who she's called, who she's received calls from, and the investigators would have used that to track her movements.
When police were asked at the press conference concerning Alyssa's disappearance where the cell phone might be, they didn't really answer.
She talked to her parents via cell phone. Do you have her cell phone? Was it left in the hotel?
I don't want to talk about the cell phone right now very much. We have some of her property, but she was in regular contact with her parents, and up until 5 days ago, 6 days ago.
The only thing you can think of is that phone was more than likely stolen, and someone else took it. They either used it, sold it, whatever. The phone remains a mystery.
So was Elisa Lam killed after encountering someone at the hotel? And what would have been the motive?
It is possible to get into a person's room, rape her, kill her, and get away with it.
Nobody notified. There's no water. I have to check out and find another hotel, have a business meeting.
But trouble at the Cecil Hotel isn't just a maintenance issue. It's a suspicious death investigation for the LAPD.
21-year-old Elisa Lam decides that she wants to travel and come down to California. She checked into the Cecil Hotel. She was last seen acting erratically on elevator surveillance video and then disappeared.
She certainly seems afraid of something or someone. I've always thought that there was a real threat, something to be afraid of outside of the elevator.
She was found 19 days later after hotel guests complained of an unusual odor and color in the hotel's water.
That initiated a maintenance man to go up and check the water tanks. As he peered inside, he discovered the floating body of Elisa Lam.
News that still isn't sitting well with some hotel guests who tell us they're disgusted.
Wouldn't you be if there was a dead body in the water you were using and drinking?
It's kind of odd, the whole damn thing.
The medical examiner ruled Elisa's death was an accidental drowning.
I feel that she likely climbed up there on her own.
But some disagreed with the ruling and thought there were still too many unanswered questions and strange circumstances surrounding Elisa's death.
The biggest question that appears to be unanswered is, how did she get in the tank?
There's potentially two ways to get into that tank. There's the ladder that allows you to climb the side of the tank and then go into that open access portal.
The tanks had 20-pound metal lids, so they would have been pushed to the side before she got into the water tank.
Or there's another ladder that leads to the top of the elevator shaft, which is higher than the tank. And if you were up there on that platform, you could jump down onto the top of the tank where she ultimately was discovered.
But either way, it was a really tricky kind of maze-like situation to actually get up and then into one of these 4 water tanks.
I visited the scene of where she was found on the rooftop of the hotel and looked at the tanks, but where the location was difficult to get to. The terrain surrounding the tanks was fairly difficult to maneuver.
Now we're talking about a young lady who is not, by a lot of standards, big, maybe 120 pounds, that can climb that ladder, single-handedly push that lid off, which weighs only about 20 or so pounds, but still it takes some effort. You have to think maybe something else was involved, another person.
The fact that she would have had to have done all of these steps to get into this tank really makes you wonder, was there foul play?
And not all experts agreed with the coroner's ruling that this was an accidental drowning.
My name is John Heiseroth. I've performed during my career about just north of 6,000 complete autopsies. When I look at the autopsy report, it's hard to conclude from the objective findings that Elisa Lam died as a result of drowning. There was no water in the lungs. In a drowning, there's oftentimes water in the stomach. There's no water in the stomach in this case.
The lungs showed post-mortem changes. This was not conclusive one way or the other for a drowning, as the tissues had undergone changes, decomposition changes.
There was too much decomposition. There was not a lot to save there. I'm Dr. William Maroney, and I'm the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for Bay County, Michigan. Ordinarily, if you look at a good, healthy set of lungs in an autopsy, they kind of look like the sponge in your bucket when you're washing your car. But after 19 days at greater than ambient temperatures, submerged in water, you're going to actually make them more look like slimy liver. So there is no clear, unambiguous source of water in the lungs.
She was found in a tank of water, but being found in a tank of water doesn't necessarily mean you drowned in that tank of water. You could have been killed outside and dumped in that tank of water.
We're backing into the decision that this is a death by drowning instead of aggressively presenting it. It's a default. That's what it is. It's a default.
What's even weirder about the body is the fact that there were no scratches or bruises.
There's nothing to indicate that she had any ligature marks or petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes, which would indicate she'd been choked.
So if one wants to hypothesize that she was killed outside and then dumped in the tank, it would be virtually impossible to conclude that she would have been suffocated, perhaps by a pillow. There's no way, even the best forensic pathologists, unless they're extremely suspicious, would detect that. Not only that, in this case, she was 3 weeks decomposed. So to find any evidence that she had had a pillow over her face to suffocate her would be completely gone.
The speculation that Miss Lam was murdered would be just that, speculation.
But there was something else in the autopsy report adding to the speculation.
There was an error that was made on a checkbox.
Based on the handwriting, some believe Elisa's death was marked as an accident on June 15th, and 3 days later, something caused the coroner to change her death to undetermined. But Dr. Tovar says the changes were made at the same time, and the date above the accident box actually says June 18th.
It would be probably wiser if the coroner would have ruled the case undetermined, because the findings for the cause of death, drowning, aren't there. The findings for the determination of accidental death aren't there.
And if authorities thought it was so easy for Elisa Lam to get into the tank, why didn't the LAPD check the tank when she went missing?
In this case, when they originally searched the hotel roof, they missed that hatch. And unfortunately, we have to own that.
But one of the autopsy findings had Dr. Heiseroth really puzzled.
Miss Lamb, when they finally found the body, she was found floating on the water facing up. I find that a little bit problematic because when a person drowns, they drown under the water. The natural configuration of the body wants to go to fetal position. Gaseous production rises the body. As it rises up, the feet and legs dangle downward as a rudder, and you rise all the way to the top of the surface face down. In this case, Elisa Lam was found face up, which to me is unusual.
We know she's dead. We just don't know what brought it about. Why did this occur? Quite frankly, LAPD and New York PD are the two of the best police departments in the United States.
The LAPD might have just been overloaded, and it might have been easy to kind of say it was accidental, and that's the story we're sticking to.
Therefore, you don't have to do anything else. And after all, I probably have 50 more cases, and I need to get to those. And this was an easy solve.
At the time that Elisa went missing, the Christopher Dorner incident was blowing up. We had a rogue ex-LAPD officer running around killing people. All of Southern California was on high alert. That drew some of the attention away from Elisa's case, unfortunately. There were up to 18 officers and detectives initially assigned to help find Elisa. A lot of those resources had to be retracted in order to go attend to that more urgent, I hate to say that, but more life-threatening situation. And so then it came down to 4 primary detectives.
Something else odd was discovered at the scene. Could Elisa's clothes that were found in the tank with her actually hold clues to what happened on the roof? Elisa Lam is found dead in a water tank on top of LA's Cecil Hotel. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning, but not everyone believed it was just an accident. If she was murdered, what would have been the motive?
It is possible to get into a person's room, rape her, kill her, and get away with it.
So there's speculation as to, well, where is the information on the rape kit? It's there, it's in the case file. And the results of examining that rape kit were that there was no evidence whatsoever of any type of sexual assault.
I don't think that means too much to me. This is a woman who's been soaking in a vat of water for 3 weeks. It doesn't surprise me that had she been raped, it would have been all washed out. It would have been all washed out.
On exam, we didn't identify any evidence of trauma to the anus or genital regions.
However, Dr. Tovar did discover blood pooling in her anal area.
I feel that the fluid that was collected there was a result of her decomposition.
It could have been sexual assault. I'm saying it's possible because Ms. Lam was fairly advanced in her decomposition. And I don't know how or why they didn't rule that out. They chose just to say, it's decomposition, and we're done.
Also fueling speculation of a possible sexual assault was the fact that Elisa Lam was found naked.
That's very unusual.
The reason that she was naked and why she was found that way is not necessarily determined by the autopsy itself. Her clothing was present in the tank with her, including a watch and her room key.
The clothes were the same clothes she's wearing in the bizarre hotel elevator surveillance video.
I personally believe that it's probably more likely than not that if she were to be thrown in that tank, to get rid of the clothes, they were thrown in after her.
She may have been forced to remove her clothes and get into the tank. Probably the biggest question I have about the crime scene that hasn't been answered, what are the weird sandy particles that were found on her clothes that were floating next to her in the water tower?
So could it have been from some of the material from the roof or whatever?
Had she placed her clothes on the roof before she got into the water tank? Had somebody else made her strip and placed her clothes on the roof?
I examined the clothing and noticed that there was this sand-like particulate. What it actually was not determined by myself.
The two explanations that law enforcement ultimately accepted was that there was either sediment from the bottom of the tank that was pre-existing or sediment that had been transferred there in her clothes from going to the beach.
But it seems like if she were swimming freely in the tank, all the sediment would wash off the clothes, and then if she took the clothes off, they wouldn't have any sediment on them. Think about it, you're like washing the clothes while swimming through the tank. Usually in a forensic case, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably not correct.
But there was something else in Elisa's autopsy that would stir up even more controversy, and it might reveal the answer to the biggest question everyone wanted to know.
Elisa Lam is a college student in Vancouver, Canada. She goes to Los Angeles and checks into the Cecil Hotel. She was discovered in a water tank, found floating in the water that the hotel guests had consumed.
Her death was ruled an accidental drowning, but some believed she may have been murdered. And in her autopsy, something would raise even more questions.
Bipolar disorder was listed as a contributing factor in her death. It is my opinion that she likely, in her state of mind that she was in, somehow climbed to the top of the tower and got into the tank, at which point there's no way to get out of the tank, and she ultimately drowned.
Just because somebody has bipolar disorder doesn't mean they're suicidal.
I just think there's a lot of unexamined things that, yes, could point to just a very tragic mental breakdown, but could also point to foul play, perhaps from somebody who knew the Cecil very, very well.
It's possible that someone was able to get her up there because she was more adventure-seeking and she was in a state of mind where she wasn't evaluating risk in the same way that she might normally. And we do know that when people are looking to prey on someone, they're not looking for the really confident, grounded person who says, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing?
The fact that she would have had to have done all of these steps to get into this tank, it's all so elaborate and so unbelievable, especially if Elisa was having some kind of psychotic break or mental break.
So if she's having a psychotic break, how does she then have a completely normal conversation with this very astute manager of a bookstore? I don't know.
And you can even see that in the elevator. You know, she's trying to hide from something that's taking place in her mind, but it's her reality.
I feel like watching it, she's afraid of something external and that it's not just an internal fear or panic.
One of the questions I had was if she could get in, how come she couldn't get out? And what I've learned is that these tanks are very much like the tank on the back of your toilet. And as the water goes down, the further from the top you are. And so as that water's being used and it's going down, the less ability you have to climb out. And even if the water was at that top level, she would not have been able to grab hold of anything to pull herself out. So she was doomed the moment she got in there. It's a horrific way to die.
Months after Elisa Lam's death, her parents filed a lawsuit against the hotel management for negligence, but a judge dismissed the case. And as far as the Cecil Hotel, its future remains a mystery.
The developer who recently purchased the Cecil said he was going to turn it in to this cool, live-work space for young professionals, but it's been years and nothing's happened. If you go to the Cecil today, it's locked. Sometimes you see what looks like tenants going in and out of the building, but then if you look up, it looks abandoned. There's no satisfying conclusion to this story, and I think because of that, it really has become a much bigger story than I anticipated. The death of Elisa Lam is one of the great mysteries of our time. There is no story that I get asked about more than Elisa Lam, hands down.
There was something about this death, the way it was found, what happened to her, and the mystery around it, that people were incredibly fascinated by it.
There should somehow be footage that corresponds with the famous elevator footage, there should be some proof, there should be something that tells us what happened to her.
This case could be reopened if there was enough public pressure.
In forensic medicine, a case is never truly closed all the way. You know, it can always be revisited if new information, new facts come into play to investigate.
Although the case has been closed, no one to this day still knows exactly how Elisa Lam got up on the hotel roof and inside the water tank. And the whereabouts of her phone still remains unclear. If you have any tips that could lead investigators to reopen the case, please contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS.